steel your hearts. Let the Emperor guide your arm, and let faith harden your sinews. These heretics have abandoned any right to live by turning from his light. They stain his realm by their continued existence. Tear them down in the name of Saint Mina. By Arjula Carton, a canoness preceptor of the Order of the Bloody Rose. The Order of the Bloody Rose is one of the major orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas, or the Sisters of Battle, founded in honor of Saint Mina by the Ecclesiarch Diakis VI in the middle of the 38th millennium. They are based on the cardinal world of Ophelia VII within the Convent Sanctorum. The Order also operates a full preceptory of battle sisters at the Shrine of the 17 Martyrs near the hive world of Malfi, in response to brewing religious conflicts in the Drusus Marches, a subsector of the Calixis sector, located in the Segmentum Obscurus. Though the Order of the Bloody Rose has committed a significant contingent of its sisters to war zones along the Great Rift since the dawn of the era Indomitus, the majority of its forces are battling against incursions coming from the galactic south. They have met the tendrils of Hive Fleet Leviathan and Hive Fleet Hydra on multiple fronts, where they have butchered the ravenous creatures and the gene-stealer cults that worship them. They have also fought a series of harrowing battles against the Thousand Sons Traitor Legion's cult of duplicity, combating the sorcerous machinations of the Tzeentch worshippers with bolt, blade, and faith. The Order's history. The matriarch of the Order of the Bloody Rose is Saint Mina, who was as renowned for her dark, brooding nature as she was for her deadly skill in battle. What few records survive through the Reign of Blood suggest that she served as Alicia Dominica's champion, and that when the reformer Sebastian Thor's armies descended upon Terra, she slew some of the mightiest invading warriors in hand-to-hand combat. One account, albeit riddled with inconsistencies, suggests that she dueled with the leader of the custodians who entered the ecclesiastical palace during the siege, and that the two fought to a standstill before words of an alliance were finally spoken. Whether true or not, the Sisters of the Bloody Rose revere Mina as the epitome of the martial virtues laid out by the daughters of the Emperor, and dedicate themselves to emulating her violent prowess. The Order was not formally created until 2.5 Terran millennia after the founding of the Adepta Sororitas. By this time, its patron, Saint Mina, was long dead. She had been one of the 5 original companions of the founder and patron of the Adepta Sororitas. She was known as dark and brooding, quick to anger, and deadly in combat. In the late 36th millennium, she was martyred at the hands of a sanguinary chaos cult, the agents of which are said to have ambushed her at prayer in a small shrine on Hydrafar. None of her sisters were present, but it is said that when they came upon her body, the entire shrine was covered in the blood of her assailants, a score of at least 20, which lay dead around her own blood-drained form. The Order of the Bloody Rose first existed as a small group of sisters who provided a bodyguard for the abbess of the Adepta Sororitas, and it was from this group that the new Major Order Militant was formed. From their first War of Faith, the Sisters of the Bloody Rose made a name for themselves as brutal executioners. They were dispatched to the Nephilim sector to put down the Slaneshi pain cults that had transformed many Imperial Shrine worlds into planet-spanning torture chambers. Hospitallers of the Order of Serenity and Dialogi of the Order of the Quill followed in the wake of the Sisters of Battle, where they were to tend to bodies and souls of the faithful after the afflicted worlds had been liberated by the Bloody Rose. But when the non-militant orders arrived in the war zone, they found only death. The militant sisters had moved from planet to planet, mercilessly butchering the cultists they encountered without stopping to free the imprisoned. Many Adeptus Monasterium adepts, as well as several captured Sisters of the Bloody Rose, had been left to languish in the cult's hellish dungeons while the Order hunted down the heretics. When the last of the Slanesh worshippers had been eradicated, the Canoness Superior of the Bloody Rose, who upon her death would become canonized as Saint Mari, penned the Thorn Treatise, using the blood of those sisters who had fallen to record the teachings of this war. In the treatise, she outlined that the path of least evil lies always with the swift extirpation of those who oppose the faith, and therefore mercy in any form must come after the meting out of righteous anger. And now, here are some of the most notable campaigns the Order took part in. The Theric Suppression in 85 M41. The entire Order, over 24 squads of Battle Sisters, participated in the Theric Suppression, the purging of the blasphemous chaos cult Epicurean on the hive world of Therics. Additional support during the suppression was provided to the Sisters by a delegation of the Adeptus Monasterium, led by Inquisitor Lord Scallan and Battle Group Purgator. The Imperial forces were also composed of 3 separate Space Marine chapters: the Mentors, the Nova Marines, and the Subjugators, as well as a regiment of the 808th Mordant Regiment of the Imperial Guard. The Sisters of the Order were instrumental in scouring the hive world of all heretics. The Defense of Dimamar in 858 M41. Dimamar, the birth world of the reforming ecclesiarch Sebastian Thor, came under attack from the Eldari of craft world Ulthware in 845 M41 without any warning or reason. Seraphim Superior Imelda of the Order of the Bloody Rose retaliated, leading her squad of Seraphim in a daring attack to slay the enemy commander, the Farseer Cowerith. The Seraphim's pistols blasted a bloody path through a score of black-clad Eldari before the Sisters were engulfed in a hurricane of psychic lightning. Though many of her companions fell, Imelda refused to yield and defiantly advanced through the eldritch storm, slaying the Eldari Farseer with a single bolt round to the head. The 13th Black Crusade, the defense of Hive Superior, in 999 M41. During the dark times of the 13th Black Crusade, the Order sent forces to the long-ignored Trail of Saint Evissa, which had been increasingly troubled by chaos-inspired uprisings and cultic activities linked to Gargatuloth, the Prince of 1,000 Faces, a powerful demon of the chaos god known as Tzeentch. Following the orders of Cardinal Rakoba, the temporal and spiritual power on Vulcanis Ultor, the Sisters of Battle were deployed near Hive Superior, the world's capital, to man its outer defenses on the shores of the Great Lake, Rapax. Unknowingly manipulated by one of Gargatulos' agents, the renegade inquisitor Golik Rensa Valinov, the Sisters of Battles fought against the Grey Knights dispatched by the Ordo Maleus to stop the demon's rebirth. Only through the brave actions and misgivings of Canoness Ludmila, the Sororitas Forces commander, did the Sisters of the Bloody Rose recognize that they were fighting loyal agents of the Emperor and serving the interests of chaos. Joining forces with the Grey Knights, the Sisters battled the demonic servitors of the powerful demon, thus enabling Brother Captain Tancred and Justica Alaric to banish the reborn Gargatuloth. And the Threshing Fields, from an unknown date in M41. En route to Ultramar, a fleet of sororitas comprising multiple preceptories of the Bloody Rose stopped on the lone planet in the Thresh system. The halt in their progression was in response to a divine vision received by Sister Assumpta, a sister who had yet to see combat. The sororitas arrayed themselves for war on the utterly lifeless world, and held their positions for a solar day, while the canonesses of each preceptory prayed for guidance. Their holy duty was made clear when the tendril of the Tyrannid Hive fleet, Ouroboros, spewed into the system. The Xenos creatures honed in on the Bloody Rose's position and descended upon the planet in great waves. Swarms of skittering predators were butchered by the Sisters. Squads of sororitas were devoured by ravenous monstrosities, and before long, the barren world was drenched in blood and ichor. Knowing that the Tyranids fed off biomass, the warriors of the Bloody Rose ensured that every corpse, human and Xenos, was burned to ashes. After 6 solar months, the influx of Tyranids into the system ceased, and after 6 more, the last Xenos creature was finally slain. Sister Assumpta was the only member of the Sororitas force to survive. The combat doctrine of the Order. The Bloody Rose's precepts of anger have truly brutal results when unleashed upon the battlefield. The Sisters advance with disciplined maneuvers, using weight of fire to gain advantage over a flank, or employing cunning feints to draw their enemy into overcommitting. Then, as soon as the foe is at close range, the Sisters charge, striking at the moment they crash into the enemy lines, and screaming wrathful praise as they give vent to their hatred. Gunstocks are swung with enough force to shatter helms and the skulls within. Chainsaws are driven messily through torsos, then wrenched out and thrust again before the spilt innards hit the ground. The power-armored warriors deliver murderous kicks, punches, and elbows that crack bones and burst organs. But in the flurry of carnage, each sister attacks with practiced precision, her rage only manifesting in the instant of impact before it is once more reined in. After the initial devastating onslaught, the sisters unleash a barrage of point-blank bolt pistol shots into any enemies still standing. The Order's beliefs. From the moment a sister joins the Bloody Rose, she is taught to foster and harness her most violent impulses so that they may be unleashed upon the enemies of the faith. Litanies of heretical deeds are intoned as novitiates engage in combat trials, the tales of spiritual traitors and vile apostates filling the trainees with hatred. Prayers that would be whispered in silence by other orders are bellowed loudly within the Bloody Rose's sanctuaries. In place of contemplative meditation, the sisters learn to light the fires of rage within themselves, even when they are not faced with provocation. Alongside such practices, they also train to focus their anger, for they are taught that to allow oneself to be overtaken by apoplexy is as great a sin as indulging in notions of clemency. Through constant drilling, they learn to unleash their inner hatred only when it is most effective, channeling it with the explosive force of a shot fired from a bolter. The Order of the Bloody Rose believes sheer martial ferocity to be a manifestation of the Emperor's will. They pray to be granted the skill, alacrity, and outrage of their matriarch in battle. Often, a sister facing down a hulking Chaos champion or Xenos monstrosity will glow with rage. Rivulets of energy gather around her into a crackling nimbus. Her eyes become a deep red, and tears of blood streak down her cheeks. She moves with lightning speed, dodging and parrying numerous death blows from her hated foe before landing her own immaculate killing strike. Such miraculous transformations are met with cries of exultation by the recipient's fellow warriors, for they know that Mina's soul is inhabiting the body of that blessed sister. Here are some of the most notable sisters of the Bloody Rose, starting with Saint Mina, who is the patron of the Order of the Bloody Rose. Although this long-dead martyr never led her order in battle, it was founded in her name. She was one of 5 companions of Alicia Dominica, the patron and founder of the Adepta Sororitas as a whole. In mid-late M36, she was martyred by a sanguinary cult whilst at prayer in a shrine on Hydrafer. When her body was found along with the shrine, she was surrounded by the corpses of 20 of her attackers, her body covered in their blood. Her personal symbol, the red rose, represents her strong character and her final death. The Canoness, Saint Aspira, the 18th Canoness of the Order of the Bloody Rose, led her sisters against the heretic Denescura and liberated almost 100 worlds from his power with only 1,000 warriors. The cloak of Saint Aspira, worn by the Canoness in life, remains a holy relic of the Order. Although she did not die there, Aspira, the savior of 100 worlds, was entombed on the distant world of Ero, in the Caradrian sector of the Segmentum Tempestus. Over millennia, her tomb became a towering monument, the Reliquary Tower. Following its destruction, her bones have recently been transferred to the Order's convent on Ophelia 7. The Canoness Ludmila, who was the commanding officer of the powerful detachment of Sisters of Battle during the events of the defense of Hive Superior during the 13th Black Crusade. Like other Imperial forces, she had been purposefully misled by the Ordo Malleus, Inquisitor turned traitor, Golik Ren Sar Valinov. The Canoness and her fellow sisters were duped into fighting the Grey Knights detachment under the command of Justica Alaric that was sent to stop the rogue Inquisitor from summoning the Demon Prince Gargatuloth, the Herald of Siege. Fortunately for the Grey Knights, Canoness Ludmila had heard legends of the silver-clad warriors, and recognized them as the loyal servants of the Emperor that they were. She led her fellow battle sisters alongside the Grey Knights in an attempt to atone for her previous error by slaying the traitorous Valinov. Unfortunately, the rogue Inquisitor was protected by a conversion field, which absorbed her shot, and then she was slain in the subsequent hand-to-hand combat. The relics of the Order. First, Beneficence. Now, this fearsomely savage chainsword is lauded amongst the Order for its perfection of weight and the deepness of its pious bite. As the deep red armor of its wielder plunges ferociously into dense knots of faithless idolaters, Beneficence sends arterial sprays across the battlefield with each cut of enemy flesh. Terrified mutants and witches fall before its blessing, as ground won for the Emperor is consecrated in sweeps of viscera. And of course, the cloak of Saint Aspera, who led her battle sisters in a war of faith that liberated nearly 100 worlds from the grip of the blasphemous tyrant Denescura. At the inception of the war, she was presented with a magnificent cloak blessed in the ecclesiastical palace of Terra. Whilst this, in itself, marked the cloak as a treasured relic, small shards of the Emperor's own armor were woven into it to ward away the blows of the enemy, elevating it to a sacred garment of incomparable spiritual significance. Saint Aspera wore the cloak throughout the War of Faith, striding into the fray heedless of her own safety, secure in her unwavering knowledge that the Emperor protects. The Order's appearance. The Order of the Bloody Rose's vestments and power armor are primarily a bright blood red, with black vestments on the outside and pure white within. The Bloody Rose's weapons are the same black as their vestments. The Order badge. The badge of Saint Mina and her followers is a red rose, with prominent thorns, representing her nature. Behind the rose are crossed 2 knife blades, dripping in blood, symbolic of the circumstances of her martyrdom. I will die when the Emperor is ready to accept my soul, and not a moment before. The Order of our Martyred Lady is one of the major orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas, or the Sisters of Battle, founded in honor of Saint Catherine by the Ecclesiarch Alexis the 22nd, the long-lived successor of the great reformer Sebastian Thor, in the 36th millennium, when the location of the Adepta Sororitas' primary convent was split between Terra and Ophelia 7, creating, among others, the Order of our Martyred Lady. Of all the Order's militant, there are none more numerous or more widely spread than this one. Its name is known by the ruling elites and unwashed masses alike on countless worlds across the galaxy, and when spoken, evokes hope in the righteous and fear amongst the faithless. The Order is renowned for its unrelenting pursuit of those who defy the Emperor by doing harm to his Imperium and its citizens. Xenos, marauders, chaos armies, and heretical cults are met with burning fury by the Sisters of our Martyred Lady, who gather wherever the enemy is found to scour them from existence. The Order holds fortified sanctuaries on a great many Imperial worlds, many of which date back to Saint Catherine's Wars of Faith. Some of these sanctuaries operate in relative isolation, existing far beyond the established boundaries of the Order's parish, but the majority are located in the Segmentum Obscurus. The broad distribution of the Order's preceptories has seen the Sisters of the Order of our Martyred Lady engage in many of the Imperium's most grueling war zones. On Armageddon, the Sisters amass to defend the Sanctorum of Saint Catherine against the Orc hordes of Gazkul Thraka. Though fully half of their number were martyred, they inflicted such casualties on their enemies that vital greenskin forces were drawn away from other battlefronts, the sheer grit of the Sisters enticing them from far and wide to join the siege. The Order has also fought on Cadia during the 13th Black Crusade of Abaddon the Despoiler. Though the planet eventually fell, the faith held by those who battled there led to a great miracle, with Saint Celestine appearing from the warp to bolster the defenders in their darkest hour. Although the Great Rift now divides many of the Order's sanctuaries, the Sisters of our Martyred Lady have not relented in their quest to avenge the Imperium's fallen heroes. They stand dauntless against the chaos forces that pour from newly opened warp storms, and they march out to annihilate any foe that would prey upon humanity's beleaguered defenders. The fire of their spirit is a beacon of hope, a sign that even in this time of abounding horror, the Emperor has not abandoned his faithful servants. And now onto the Order's history. The Order of our Martyred Lady was once known as the Order of the Fiery Heart. Like their fellow Adepta Sororitas Orders militant, the Sisters of the Fiery Heart could trace their origins back to the teachings of the Daughters of the Emperor during the Age of Apostasy in the 36th millennium. But soon, small variances began to manifest amongst the newly founded orders as the persona of the different founders asserted themselves. The Order of the Fiery Heart reflected the vengeful nature of their first canoness and eventual patron saint, Catherine. Catherine had long been regarded as Dominica's second-in-command, and even before heading her own order, had led many successful campaigns against the forces of heresy and warpcraft. With the Sisters of the Fiery Heart behind her, Catherine engaged in ever more wars of faith, seeking out the enemy both within and beyond the borders of the Imperium, and casting upon them the immolating light of the Emperor. She led her order for many solar decades, enforcing the Emperor's will and prosecuting wars of faith across the galaxy. Within her lifetime, she was declared a living saint for performing legendary acts and led her order to countless victories. It was during one such war of faith that she was slain. Records regarding the events of her martyrdom are sparse and at times contradictory, with the oldest and most reliable account appearing in a charred fragment of parchment known as the Candela Scroll. The legible script on this scroll states that Catherine's death came at the hands of the witch cult of Monasterium, but there is no indication of what this cult was or how they managed to slay the revered warrior. Ecclesiastical records do show that word of her demise sent waves of anguish throughout the Adepta Sororitas, with many orders holding solar weeks-long vigils. Yet the Order of the Fiery Heart took no such action. Every last preceptory, commandery, and mission in the Order girded themselves for battle and channeled their grief into an endless quest for retribution. In honor of their fallen matriarch, they became the Order of our Martyred Lady and have continued to seek vengeance ever since. For millennia, the Sisters of the Order bore armor and weapons of stark black as a sign of their mourning. It was only after their engagements in the Third War for Armageddon that red was introduced into their livery. Now, here are some of their most notable campaigns. The Massacre at Sanctuary 101 in 897 M41. On a world in the Vidar sector, located in the eastern fringe of the galaxy, the Order had founded a fortress convent designated Sanctuary 101. The isolated convent had the misfortune of being the Imperium's first recorded contact with the Necrons, where the Battle Sisters were massacred by Necron raiders. Video logs recorded a furious battle between the Valiant Sisterhood and the Necron warriors, but little of worth was displayed, as there appears to have been an artificial disruption introduced into the recordings. Subsequent investigations into the site of battle revealed nothing more than the mutilated corpses of the Adepta Sororitas, eviscerated in a hideously surgical manner. No signs of the true nature of Sanctuary 101's undying attackers were ever found. The Martyrdom of Praxedes in 991 M41. Canoness Praxedes reinforced the regiments of the Imperial Guard serving the cardinal world of Akassis soon after the start of the Second Tyrannic War. As the Tyranids of High Fleet Kraken assaulted the Ecclesiastical Cathedral, the combined fire of the Order's Retributor squads and Exorcist tanks obliterated the first wave of Tyranid biomorphs. But the second managed to breach the fortress walls of the cathedral. As Tyranids poured through, Praxedes confronted a Hive Tyrant. During the fighting, the Canoness was dealt a mortal wound, but even as her blood ebbed away, she summoned the strength to land a final blow, caving in the hideous beast's skull with a thunderous strike from her power mace. With the tyrant's destruction, the swarm lost all connection to the hive mind and thus all direction, with the biomorphs turning on one another in a cannibalistic rage. The sisters of our Martyred Lady wasted no time in pressing the assault, determined to avenge the death of their beloved canoness. The remaining Xenos were swept aside, buying enough time to evacuate the Ecclesiarchy's remaining priests before the Tyranids launched their next wave of attacks. Praxedes was eventually canonized as an imperial saint for her actions on Ocassis. The Third War for Armageddon in 998 M41. The Order maintained a strong presence within the Armageddon system, with its base of power at the Sanctorum of Saint Catherine, which was built within the high walls of Hive Tempestora on the world of Armageddon. Then, the largest Orc Warg ever raised, led by the warlord Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka, assaulted the planet and began the Third War for Armageddon. In the initial Orc assault, the Battle Sisters' positions were attacked by large Orc submersibles which emerged from the boiling sea. Caught unawares by the audaciousness and sheer ferocity of the Greenskins' attack, many of the Battle Sisters were slain. The Sisters were the front line of defense for Hive Tempestora, but their battle lines soon were overrun. This enabled the vile Greenskins to take control of the Hive city's underhive within only a few solar hours. With each successive wave of Orc attacks, the Sisters were continuously pushed back, until finally they found themselves with their backs to the great armored doors of their Sanctorum. It was there that the Battle Sisters made their final, heroic but futile stand against the encroaching Orc hordes. This day became one of the darkest within the Order's history, as their battle lines crumbled and they were scattered. Those few sisters that survived the final assault attempted to form their lines again, but were cut down by the massive green tide of Orcs. After an hour of savage fighting, no humans were left alive as the Orcs took Hive Tempestora and the Sanctorum. After this defeat, the Order could barely field 3 whole companies on Armageddon. The loss of their Sanctorum and the many valiant sisters who had fallen was acutely felt throughout the rest of the Order. Many novices began questioning their faith in the Emperor. Those Battle Sisters that remained recovered quickly, swearing mighty oaths of vengeance against the foul Greenskins and vowing to retake Hive Tempestora, no matter the cost. But before they could do so, the surviving Sisters of the Order were spread across the rest of the planet to help solidify key Imperial positions. Their presence proved pivotal, preventing the Orcs from overrunning several areas of Armageddon. The destruction of Chandri at some point in M41. 5 commanderies from the Order of our Martyred Lady set out to purge the heretical cults that had arisen on the mining world of Chandri. The Sororitas never arrived at their destination, giving rise to the belief that the Emperor has denied the planet's inhabitants the mercy of purification. An exterminatus action was subsequently ordered and carried out. The purging of the Saint Garat Scriptorum. In M41, it is believed that it was the Order of our Martyred Lady acting in concert with the witch-finder Inquisitor Tannenberg of the Ordo Hereticus, who descended upon the Saint Garat Scriptorum, dragging hundreds of Adeptus Terra scribes screaming to the excruciation chambers of Nemesis Tesra and burning down the Scriptorum. When the Adepts lodged a formal complaint with the High Lords of Terra, they were silenced when Inquisitor Tannenberg produced 300 specimen jars. Each contained the preserved remains of a scribe, their previously hidden mutations uncovered for all to witness. The Fall of Cadia, 999 M41. Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade descended upon Cadia. Forces drawn from across the Imperium battled to drive back the Chaos invasion, and though they fought with bitter resolve, they were in the end overwhelmed by the Despoiler's armies. Within the darkness of this war zone appeared Saint Celestine, bringing with her the 5 commanderies from the Order of our Martyred Lady that were lost in the warp 1400 years before en route to Chandri. These reinforcements provided much needed firepower and hope before Cadia was ultimately consumed by chaos energies. Celestine reaped a great toll on the armies of Abaddon. The Indomitor's Crusade. In M42, Robert Guillermin, the newly instated Lord Commander of the Imperium, launches the Indomitor's Crusade to save humanity from total annihilation. Through this grand campaign, he is able to reinforce the embattled Adeptus Astartes chapters, bolstering them with Primaris Space Marines. The Order of the Ebon Chalice is instrumental in the Crusade's opening maneuvers, fighting alongside Guillermin's forces to save the most strategically vital planets in the Segmentum Solar. Other orders lend their might on many of the Crusade's multiple war fronts. It is during this dire time that Junith Eruita is elevated to the rank of Canoness Superior of the Order of our Martyred Lady, having proven herself in countless battles to be a steadfast and fiery leader. A commandery of the Order of our Martyred Lady joined battle group Faustus of the Crusade's fleet Secundus under the command of Canoness Justine. It served as part of the force that sought to reclaim imperial control over the Bosphorus system. The Humble Saints. In M42, the Alpha Legion enacted a fell ritual on the agri-world of Nolf Prime. Sisters of the Order fought alongside Space Marines of the Iron Hands chapter to annihilate the heretics, but were unable to prevent the planet from becoming saturated with chaos energies. Yet amidst this catastrophe, there was a glimmer of hope. The Emperor's will was manifested through the faithful inhabitants of the planet, many of whom gained the ability to project holy flames from their bodies. The War of Beasts. From circa 0M41 to 15M42. The Sisters of Battle that fought upon Vigilus during the War of Beasts were a vital part of its defense. Without their faith, surety, and swiftness of purpose, the hive sprawl of Otek would almost certainly have fallen, and likely Hyperia too. Some amongst the citizens have described the feats of martial prowess they exhibited as miraculous. The Adepta Sororitas have a proud tradition that saw their founders talk in person with the God Emperor himself. They are more than a mere military presence, for they embody the Imperial Creed and back it up with fire and fury. On Vigilus, they kept the Hive Sprawl safe from countless threats, ranging from mundane rebellion to supernatural manifestation. The Order of our Martyred Lady had fought to keep it unsullied by the scourge of chaos for nearly 4,000 Terran years. They had garrisoned Saints Haven, the planetary capital and heart of the ecclesiarchy on the world, ever since it was a simple basilicanum, and patrolled hundreds of kilometers of alabaster ramparts and tower-dotted boulevards in force. Being urbanized to such a degree, they fought almost exclusively in the built-up areas of the Hive Sprawls, and the Adepta Sororitas of Hyperia Hive Sprawl became a largely mechanized force. They had a great many transports at their behest, and were well versed in the tactics of citizen control during times of strife, so much so that the sight of their midnight black vehicles sent the populace of Hyperia scrambling to move out of the way. Each Canoness and Sister Superior knew the city streets well, having made a study of them for their entire tenure. With the data harvests of the Order's Dialogus predicting likely threat zones and guiding their optimal passage from one Hive Sprawl district to another, the Sisters of Hyperia were masters of their territory. Should the unbeliever, the heretic, or the abomination threaten a city district, the Sisters of Battle were swift to respond. It was this home advantage that saw them hurl back the Orc invaders time and time again in the War of Beasts opening stages. Such was the influence of the Adeptus Ministorum over Vigilus that the Sisters of Battle under their command had priories and abbeys in every Hive Sprawl. They were initially placed there to further the reach of Saints Haven, or rather, the ecclesiarchy's political presence there, and for a time, the planetary governor Lucien Agamemnus resented them. But as the Orcs slowly closed on the planet's metropolises, and the Gene Stealer cult of the Pauper Princes rose up in dizzying numbers from beneath the streets, the true value of the Adepta Sororitas became clear. Where the Sisters of Battle walked, the grace of the Emperor held back unnatural magic and banished nightmares like the morning sun. Where they fought, the populace fought with them. The Canoness Superior in charge of the Adepta upon Vigilus, a fiery and short-tempered individual known as Temperance Blaze, was so roundly feared that she was given free rein by the entire ruling Aquilarian Council to prosecute the Vigilus campaign as she saw fit. Beneath her was a network of trusted canonesses and Celestian superiors she had named the Sacred Thorns, each of whom was entrusted with the defense of the Ministorum's interests in a different Hive Sprawl. When the Space Marines made planetfall, it was Temperance Blaze that dealt in person with the Chapter Masters. In the first few solar weeks of the war, she had taken the invasion of her planet hard and had led many a counterstrike in person, taking out her righteous indignation upon every malcontent and coward she could find, as well as the Xenos invaders that threatened her cordons. Only when the war ground into more of a stalemate did she resume her role as war leader, coordinating the defense of Hyperia with lethal efficiency and leaving the killing to her sisters. used to all but ignoring the officers of the Astra Militarum, the Adeptus Astartes conversely worked closely with Blaze, for they saw in her a powerful ally with vital knowledge of each theatre of war in which they fought. Working together, they proved far greater than the sum of their parts. Though the Sisters of Battle kept largely to the high sprawls, they held the line when even a whole regiment of Imperial Guardsmen would have been found wanting, defending the interior districts with Bolter, Flamer, and Melter Blast. And the Taladus War in M42. 3 preceptories of the Order of our Martyred Lady under the command of Canoness Sarita were among the defenders of the Grand Honorificum Cathedral City Complex on the cardinal world of Benediction. With the aid of other Imperial forces, they successfully blunted the final assault of the Word-Bearers and their demonic and Chaos cult allies under the command of Cor Ferron upon the Great Cathedral. The Order's Combat Doctrine. Retreat. I have a score of the Emperor's finest battle sisters at my command, and you think a few hundred alien savages are cause to turn our back and flee? Let the enemy come. They shall find neither our resolve nor our aim wavering. From Sister Superior Lacina. The Sisters of our Martyred Lady continue to embody Catherine's burning passion and unflagging determination. On the battlefield, they employ tactics that see their formations spread like an unstoppable fire, advancing inexorably as they reduce all who stand before them to ash. Yet their approach to warfare is far from undisciplined. Catherine was a devoted student of military doctrine and combined the formidable fighting techniques developed by the Daughters of the Emperor with those practiced by other branches of the Imperium. Her teachings have been upheld by the Order, and its sisters are able to switch from one strategy to another with frightening speed and efficiency. The Order's beliefs. Even if you are able to kill me, heretic, my soul shall then become like fire. I shall be taken up by the Emperor and shall blaze as one with his divine light. For evermore shall I guide the faithful, lending them my strength until you and your cursed kind are scoured from existence. If you're able to kill me. From Canoness Arlay. Since the death of their matriarch, the Order of our Martyred Lady have developed a cult of martyrdom that is unparalleled amongst the Adepta Sororitas. All Sororitas are taught that to die serving the Emperor is the purest fate his servants can hope for, but amongst the Sisters of our Martyred Lady, this ideal is expressed so fervently that it can appear to the uninitiated as though they have a death wish. Isolated battle sisters stand bravely against onrushing hordes of foes, hymns of defiance and reports of bolt guns rising to a simultaneous crescendo. And when the blades of the foe hack into the sisters' flesh, they give their souls willingly up to the God Emperor. Such noble deaths are met with shouts of praise from the slain sisters' comrades, for it is by such unwavering loyalty and boundless faith that the Emperor's gaze is drawn to the battlefield. The name of these martyrs, those who remain achieve feats that defy explanation, destroying foes of far greater numbers and transforming inevitable defeats into miraculous victories. It is not only the slain warriors of their order that the Sisters of our Martyred Lady revere, it is all who have given their life to preserve the sanctity of the Imperium. The Sisters look to the example of their matriarch, who as a shield-bearer placed the lives of others above her own, and celebrate those warriors who embody the spirit of Saint Catherine in their defense of mankind. Through battle psalms, they give praise to the Imperial Guardsmen, Space Marines and Tech Priests who have been slain fighting alongside them in their wars of faith. The bravest fallen soldiers are bestowed the same honor that the Order of our Martyred Lady gives its own sisters. Their names are added to the Order's hymns of vengeance and are sung before combat to stoke the wrath of the Sororitas. The Order's appearance. The Order of our Martyred Lady wore black power armor with black vestments that possessed red linings from the death of Saint Catherine until the end of the Third War for Armageddon in 998 M41. They currently wear black power armor and red vestments, with the red intended to honor the sacrifice of the Battle Sisters who died on Armageddon. In the past, their weaponry has also been painted a distinctive red. The Order's badge. The iconography of the Order is that of an ankh with a white skull placed in the center of its circular head. Pain is the sister who fights at my side. Pain recalls to me my wrongs, that I might strive in pursuit of penance. Pain insists that I stand my ground, steady my aim, fight on, though my lifeblood falls like rain to the thirsting soil. Pain is an ally. Pain is a friend. Pain is truth. From Sister Erinika Nabotu. The Order of the Valorous Heart is one of the major orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas. The order was founded in honor of Saint Lucia by the Ecclesiarch Alexis the 22nd, the long-lived successor of the great reformer Sebastian Thor in the 36th millennium. At the time of the order's founding, the Convent Sanctorum was split between the convents on Ophelia 7 and Tara, which created the orders militant of the Ebon Chalice, Valorous Heart, Fiery Heart, and the Argent Shroud. Sisters of the Order of the Valorous Heart are driven by the belief that they still must atone for the Sisterhood's acts as unwitting accomplices to the renegade High Lord of Tara, Gauj Vanda, during the Age of Apostasy's reign of blood in the 36th millennium. Like their patron Saint Lucia, the Order is highly penitent, always striving for atonement for even the slightest perceived sin. A disproportionate number of sisters in this order exile themselves to the Sisters Repentia, compared to the other major orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas. Because they're constantly reminded of their part in the reign of blood, sisters of this order can be particularly suspicious of those who would call themselves prophets of the Emperor. The bulk of the Order's sanctuaries lie deep in the Ultima Segmentum, with the vast majority having been established during hard-fought wars against Xenos and traitor forces. Sanctified fortresses stand amidst Deathworld swamps, jagged mountain ranges, and barren wastelands that were scoured of life millennia ago. Relief sculptures and stained armorglass panes within these sanctuaries depict Sororitas belligerentating hordes of orcs, driving Necrons back beneath the sands and roasting foul heretics in cleansing flames. Many of these sanctuary planets were plunged into darkness when the Great Rift tore open at the start of the era Indomitus and were invaded by demons or subjected to mass Drukhari raids. Yet, the Order has not wavered in its faith. Though many of its preceptories are cut off from the light of the Emperor, they believe he still sees their struggles. They refer to this time of great trial as the hour of abassination, for the Imperium Nihilus has been blinded, just as Lucia was. But, like their matriarch, the Order of the Valorous Heart have steeled themselves to endure whatever torments are thrust upon them. The Order's history. In both their battle tactics and acts of worship, the Sisters of the Valorous Heart adhere to doctrines of stoicism and forbearance. Their practices stem from the teachings of their founder and matriarch, Lucia, who, among Dominica's companions, was said to be a paragon of constancy. She was the level-headed counterpoint to Catherine's burning passion. When the Sisters of the Convent Sanctorum were split, Ecclesiarch Alexis XII wrote that Lucia's Order of the Valorous Heart was to be the immovable anvil to the fiery heart's crushing hammer. Yet, from their inception, the Valorous Heart were far from a purely defensive force. Led by their matriarch, they aggressively sought worlds upon which the roots of heresy had grown deep, where witchcraft and profane mutation ran rampant, and then set themselves to the task of systematically expunging all traces of faithlessness. The Order willingly plunged itself into protracted battles amidst horrific conditions, laying siege to sorcerers' cults on death worlds and storming Xenos planets that were inimical to human existence. Aside from being undeniably effective in grinding away the enemy, these tactics also served as a form of penance. In the oldest manuscript of Lucia's teachings, recorded during her first address to her order, she explained that the Adepta Sororitas would forevermore carry the burden of atonement for the actions that she and the daughters of the Emperor had taken in supporting the pretender Gauge Vanda. Lucia's martyrdom came at the hands of a recidivist sect. She was captured and tortured over long solar months, the heretics attempting to break her spirit and make her recant her faith in the Emperor. Lucia's eyes were gouged out, and she was forced to listen to the screams of 1,000 innocents as they themselves were tortured to death. Unknown to her, a group of her own sisters were amongst those killed in this way, but it is said that not one of them uttered a sound as they endured their torments, so as not to cause their matriarch any more pain than she had already suffered. Lucia eventually died, and the recidivists claimed loudly that they had shattered her resolve. But over the following solar decade, the Order of the Valorous Heart tracked down and captured every last member of the sect, all of whom confessed to lying about the matriarch's lapse of faith. What became of those heretics is not known outside the Order. What is known is that the contingent of Sisters Hospitaller from the Order of the Silent Vow has been seconded to the Valorous Heart ever since that time, and have been putting their knowledge of life extension and pain enhancement to use deep beneath the sanctuary of Lucia's reprisal. Now, here are some of the most notable campaigns. The first, Savavan Crusade, in 555 M38. Having fallen prey to a cult uprising amongst its bloated population of crypt-dwelling tomb helots, the cardinal world of Savavan is retaken by the Battle Sisters of the Order in a decade-long crusade of fire and zeal. The Orphean War of Faith, from 903 to 922 M39. With several worlds firmly in the grip of the vile adorators of chaos in the distant Orpheus sector of Segmentum Tempestus, the Order responded to the call to arms issued by Archconfessor Marduk of Helvamon, who was later beatified. Guided by his sacred vision of the Emperor, the Archconfessor rallied the remaining Imperial worlds behind him. In a gruesome 20-year-long campaign that would see a full fifth of the sector's population die, the Order of the Valorous Heart purged several worlds of the vile touch of demons and mutants, renegades, and Chaos Space Marines alike. The Order, however, did not stand alone, as it fought alongside their sisters among the Order of the Black Sepulchre, the Space Marines of the Angels Revenant Chapter, and the secretive Chamber Militant of the Ordo Maleus, the Grey Knights. The Ashen War, in 307 M40. The Ashen War was a series of brushfire revolts and incursions that erupted across the Ashen sub-sector between 300 M40 and 307 M40. After a bloody chaos cult-inspired revolt on the cardinal world of Dimamar exposed how overstretched Imperial control over the surrounding region had become. Slowly stripped of much of its defenses over the course of several generations to provide for the needs of other pressing conflicts nearby, this border region was ill-equipped to stave off catastrophe when it came. The Imperial counter-invasion was led by the combined forces of two Space Marine chapters, the Dark Hands and the Exorcists, backed by the Necromundan 54th and 60th Rifles of the Astra Militarum and the Battle Sisters of the Order of the Valorous Heart. The Exorcists quickly realized that one of the keys to victory would be locating and destroying the single dark master of many names that lurk behind the divergent chaos cults in the region, a demonic creature that on Dimamar was known as the Horned God. The Exorcists finally cornered the Demon Prince in the maze-like pre-human ruins of the dead world of Belfargo. The Exorcists, with the aid of a hastily composed Ordo Maleus strike team, managed to banish the Demon Prince back to the Immaterium, but fully a third of the Exorcist chapter had perished. With this victory, the tide of the war was now in the Imperium's favor, and within a standard year, the sub-sector was brought back under Imperial control. The Serferis Secundus Intervention. In M41, several squads from the Order of the Valorous Heart were sent to help augment inquisitorial forces in quelling a series of mutant riots on the planet of Serferis Secundus in the Calixis sector. The Aculus Crusade in 777 M41. The Order participated in the Aculus Crusade to retake the Jericho Reach in the Ultima Segmentum for the Imperium. The Battle of the Penitent in 938 M41. The Order of the Ebon Chalice and the Order of the Valorous Heart suffered great losses against war boss Black Axe's Orc hordes. They were eventually pushed back to the walls of the Cathedral of Saint Dufault. The attackers were held back only due to the determination and sacrifice of hundreds of Sisters Repentia. They bought enough time for the Battle Sisters to open the vast cathedral gates, and the green skins were slaughtered shortly after by 24 penitent engines. The Plague Wars in M42. The Battle Sisters of the Order of the Valorous Heart aided the Ultramarines in the defense of the realm of Ultramar from the assaults of the Death Guard and other Nurglite forces in the Plague Wars. And the Unwelcome Resurrection in M42. Amidst the darkness of the Imperium Nihilus, the Order established a bastion in the Vesmir system. Nearby Imperial forces flocked to the highly fortified sanctuary ensconced in the orbital hive city above Vesmir II. There, they pooled what strength they had to fight back against the marauding heretic Astartes and chaos demons. Elevator mine shafts plunging down to the gas-enshrouded planet's surface provided a steady flow of raw materials, while the hive's manufactoria implemented exhaustion shifts to ensure that the Sororitas and Astra Militarum's troops in the city were stocked with the necessary tools of warfare. The Sisters of Battle and their allies successfully defended the hive against 2 chaos assaults, but as the heretics prepared for a third siege, the mineshaft suddenly ceased functioning. Massive energy signatures showed that some eldritch force had awakened beneath the toxic clouds of Vesmir II. Canoness Jocindir recognized the threat, informing her sisters that the planet they were stationed above was a Necron tomb world that was just now stirring into action. Her tactical assessment was that the Hive City could not hold against the invading heretic Astartes without supplies. However, both enemies could be defeated if they were drawn into battle against one another. The sisters prepared to descend to the surface and draw out the awakening Necron army. Before she disembarked, Jocindir issued a standing order to the Astra Militarum defending the orbital hive, telling them to hold the line no matter the cost until she returned. The Order's Combat Doctrine. The example set by Lucia in her life, as well as through her martyrdom, has led to the Order of the Valorous Heart employing methods of warfare that are unique among the Adepta Sororitas. At the outset of battle, the sisters pray to the Emperor and their matriarch for the strength to endure the horrors to come. They then launch offensives to cut off their foes' supply routes and lines of retreat. With the enemy locked in place, the Order begins sabotaging any infrastructure in the area. Water supplies are drained, fuel reserves destroyed, and pipelines transporting noxious substances are vented into the atmosphere. On feral worlds, anything that could provide the enemy with the least sustenance is incinerated. In short order, the battlefield is transformed into a harrowing desert, with a grinding war of attrition remaining as the only path to victory for either side. It is in these conditions that the Sisters of the Valorous Heart excel. No hardship is too great to shake their resolve, no pain so severe that they waver in their duty. They press the attack with one measured advance after another, inexorably driving their way into hostile territory and paving a path before them with the corpses of their foes. The glacial press of power-armored warriors moving forwards is enough to erode the morale of even the most dauntless enemies, as is the sight of sororitas who continue to stand and fight after enduring multiple grievous wounds. When the sisters find themselves on the defensive, their unmatched grit allows them to withstand punishment that would scatter a less faithful force. Their hymns ring loud as barrages are leveled against them, and should the frustrated foe resort to an all-out assault, the sisters sally forth with unfailing vigor. Due to the methods of combat they employ, the preceptories of the Valorous Heart typically boast greater numbers of exorcists and retributor squads than those of the other orders. They use their heavy weaponry to establish solid bases of long-range fire, raining death upon the enemy's position and punishing anyone foolish enough to advance towards them. Many amongst the Order say that they can feel the beating of Lucia's noble heart in the lightning-fast thud of bolt shells. Others hear her cries of defiance resounding within the sky-tearing crack of exorcist missiles. It is little wonder that they see miracles manifesting in the fires of their bombardments and are so eager to charge into the infernos they have wrought. The Order's beliefs. Given the nightmarish conditions in which they choose to battle, it is no surprise that many Sisters of the Valorous Heart bear gruesome scars. The stigmata of torn flesh is seen as a badge of honor amongst the Order, for it is a reminder of the sufferings of Lucia. A sister who loses an eye in battle is considered truly blessed, for it allows her to better understand the pain endured by her matriarch and to see more clearly the path of faith before her. The Sisters of the Order rarely accept numbing agents or pain-reducing stims when their wounds are being tended to, even where surgery or amputation is required. To avoid the experience of pain in this way would be to deny the power of faith to overcome all suffering. Their training procedures and rites of worship have also been adapted to pay homage to the trial of its founder. Upon induction, each battle sister must memorize the hymnal known as the Passion of Saint Lucia, reciting all 555 verses at specific points throughout the day. The sisters also submit themselves to various acts of excruciation. These serve as penance for the sins committed by their spiritual forebears. They pray for the daughters of the Emperor with their hands held over open flames, and they ask for absolution whilst pressing the teeth of ceremonial chainswords into their flesh. And the Order's appearance. The Sisters of Battle of the Order of the Valorous Heart wear black power armor as well as black cloaks with white or sometimes red linings. Their order badge and ecclesiarchy symbol is red. And the order badge. The icon used by the order is a white Maltese cross with a red heart in the center. The order's banner depicts Saint Lucia, a single drop of blood running down her cheek. Sometimes she is represented with Gauge Van Dyer's severed head, which the daughters of the Emperor received after Alicia Dominica executed him. These depictions reinforce her image as an ideal battle sister. Within me burns the holy radiance of the Emperor made manifest, while your soul festers with the meager filth of chaos. I am the light to your darkness, heretic. As sudden dawn scatters the shadows of night, so I and my sisters shall purge all trace of you from this holy place and make it as though you never were. From Sister Superior Chiandra Lassama. The Order of the Sacred Rose is one of the major orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas, or the Sisters of Battle, founded in honor of Saint Arabella by the Ecclesiarch Diakis VI in the middle of the 38th millennium, at the same time as the Order of the Bloody Rose was founded. The order is based on Terra in the Convent Prioris. The Order's history. In the wake of the Mad High Lord Gauge Van Dyer's downfall in the 36th millennium, which ended his tyrannical reign of blood, Sebastian Thor was declared Ecclesiarch and instituted sweeping reforms to the ecclesiarchy. The High Lords of Terra were fearful of a repetition of the Reign of Blood, and so the Decree Passive was passed, forbidding the ecclesiarchy from maintaining men under arms. Alicia Dominica, leader of the Daughters of the Emperor, at Thor's order, formally founded the Orders Militant of the Adepta Sororitas, which adhere to the letter, if not to the spirit, of the decree in that all its warriors were female. Following Thor's reformation of the ecclesiarchy, the newly founded Adepta Sororitas were split between the Convent Prioris on Holy Terra and the Convent Sanctorum on Ophelia 7. Both of these convents are massive fortresses housing tens of thousands of sisters. Those sisters still residing at San Leo were transported to the new convent, and the foundations of the non-militant orders were laid. In time, the Order's militant grew into larger and more powerful organizations, and Sebastian Thor's successor, the Ecclesiarch Alexis the 22nd, decreed that the two convents each be divided into two orders militant. Though Arabella was only canonized posthumously, she performed countless miracles during her lifetime. She traveled the Imperium serving as a commander and beacon of faith for many solar decades. The circumstances surrounding her martyrdom are not recorded in any ecclesiastical text, but in the 38th millennium, the Order of the Sacred Rose was founded in her name. Ecclesiarch Diakis VI formed the order from the sisters of the Convent Prioris, and from the outset, the Sacred Rose proved themselves worthy of their matriarch. Through their wars of faith, they brought the light of the Emperor to regions long thought lost to darkness. Imperial planets were freed from the yoke of heretical tyrants, cabals of Xenos mystics were hunted down and butchered, and sanctuaries were established to serve as outposts of divinity in the most remote corners of the Imperium. The Sacred Rose forged a sizable parish in the Ultima Segmentum, but like Arabella, they brought their faith to bear across the galaxy. Like the Order of the Bloody Rose, the Order of the Sacred Rose was not established during the existence of its patron saint, Arabella. In her lifetime, she earned the honorific of Liberator, and many battle sisters, especially retributors, are known to pray to her spirit for liberation from doubt and rash action when a cool, logical head is required. Of all of Dominica's bodyguards, Arabella was known as a particularly disciplined, even-tempered sister. However, behind her serenity lay the determination of a resolute warrior, and her symbol was thus a white rose held aloft in a mailed gauntlet. The white armored sisters of the Sacred Rose embody these same virtues, facing down alien hordes and warp-spawned monsters with bolters calmly leveled where lesser warriors would panic and falter. The Era Indomitus. The Order's ability to draw others to their cause has been of crucial value since the Great Rift tore open at the start of the Era Indomitus. The occluding mass of warp storms has plunged hundreds of thousands of worlds into perpetual darkness. Astropathic lines of communication have been severed by the psychic upheaval. Billions of distress calls have been lost in the screaming void. Cut off from the light of the Astronomicon, navigators are unable to guide void ships between distant stars, and so, even those cries for help that are received can rarely be answered with action. The majority of the Sacred Rose's sanctuaries lie deep within the Imperium Nihilus, but few have succumbed to the nightmares unleashed across that half of the galaxy. The Sisters of the Sacred Rose have remained a steadfast beacon of hope and have fought the enemies of the faith with the same resoluteness of spirit that they have always possessed. Where many worlds were consumed by panic and fear even before the servants of the dark gods fell upon them, those under the care of the Order have become bastions of defiance. Sororitas patrolled execute anyone who expresses doubt in the security of the Imperium. At the same time, Astra Militarum regiments are commandeered by the Order, and soldiers showing the slightest hints of mutation are expunged. On each planet, the Sororitas lead defenses against legions of demons and heretic Astartes. Yet, it is not only their own worlds that they fight to protect. The Sisters of the Sacred Rose have, miraculously, appeared in multiple war zones across the Imperium Nihilus. Few question how the Sororitas were able to hear their calls for reinforcement, or how they managed to navigate amidst the darkness and horror. Those that do are told by the Sisters that Saint Arabella always provides guidance, even when the Emperor's will is not clear. Here are some of the most notable campaigns. The War for Piety in 835 M41. The Shrine World of Piety rematerialized in real space in 835 M41 after being swallowed by a massive warp storm 2 standard centuries earlier. The planet was, however, almost unrecognizable, having been transformed during its time in the Monasterium into a hideous demon world. Canoness Soraya of the Order of the Sacred Rose immediately led a force of battle sisters to the planet to retrieve artifacts from the Reliquary of Hope, one of the few imperial sites on Piety to have withstood the corruption of chaos. As the rest of her force established a perimeter around the Reliquary, Soraya led several squads of sisters into the labyrinthine corridors beneath. For 3 solar days, she and her battle sisters fought their way through demon and mutant-haunted passageways. Bolters cut down schools of blood-hungry demon hounds, and the sisters' flamers purged vast swaths of bloated plague beasts. Only Soraya and 2 Celestians survived the horror to rejoin their order on the surface, having recovered the left thigh bone of Saint Dolan and 3 pages from an original copy of the Lexicon of Falsehoods from a stasis vault in the Reliquary. The surviving battle sisters withdrew to orbit with their prizes just as a fleet of Grey Knight starships arrived and laid waste to the planet with cyclonic torpedoes, performing the merciful exterminatus, which put the world's tortured inhabitants out of their misery and offered them the Emperor's peace. The Fires of Faith in M41. A swarm of orc rocks crashed down the scorched world of Typhus 1, where the Order of the Sacred Rose maintained an isolated sanctuary outpost. The greenskins quickly overwhelmed the planet's defenders, but a score of battle sisters managed to barricade themselves deep within the sanctuary's crypts. Their prayers to the Emperor appeared to be answered when a massive solar flare enveloped Typhus 1. Every last orc was incinerated, while the entombed sisters remained unharmed. The Second Halo Schism in M41. When the Arch-Confessor Cornelius preached the War of Faith that saw the demagogues of the Second Halo Schism burned on pyres 20 meters high, it was the female warriors of the Order of the Sacred Rose that broke the back of the heretical cult's fanatical defense of the Palace of Radiance. The War of Faith in the Kaurava system in M41. Led by their canoness Selena Agna, the Order helped lead an imperial crusade against Xenos, heretics, and the forces of chaos within the Kaurava system. This crusade brought them into brief conflict with other imperial forces, including the Blood Raven Space Marine chapter and the Imperial Guard's 252nd Conservator Regiment. The Battle Sisters of the Order were supported by the living Saint Anais in the defense of the Order's primary bastion in the Sama district on the planet of Kaurava 1. The Defense of Valador in 997 M41. The Tyranid Hive Fleet, Leviathan, overruns the ecclesiarchy world of Valador in a matter of solar hours, slaughtering the entire population of pilgrims and Monasterium adepts, as well as overwhelming a battle barge of the Iron Lords chapter. A small force of battle sisters from the Order of the Sacred Rose represents the only humans to bear witness to the event, having barely fought their way clear of the carnage. The Cryptas Campaign in 998 M41. Canoness Magda Grace led a force of battle sisters to aid the Blood Angels in the defense of the Cryptas system from Hive Fleet Leviathan. And the Chalnath Expanse Campaign in M42. On several worlds in the Chalnath Expanse, the Imperial Creed is replaced by the aberrant philosophies propagated by the Tau Empire's Fifth Sphere expansion. Sisters of the Sacred Rose respond to this crisis of faith, saving those who have remained true to the Emperor and purging those who have been led into damnation. Warriors of the Tau Fire Caste present formidable resistance to the Sororitas, but the true threat comes from the Tau leadership caste, known as the Ethereals, whose false preachings of the greater good claim countless human souls. The Order's Combat Doctrine. When the Sisters of the Sacred Rose march to war, they do so in a state of holy grace. Scores of sororitas advance in perfect tactical harmony, adapting fluidly to the shifting tides of battle. Squads unleash the firepower of the Holy Trinity with measured discipline. As they do so, they lift their voices, singing lilting hymns in praise of the Emperor. This symphony of choral worship and roaring weaponry quickly drowns out the screams of dying mutants and the wet tearing of heretical flesh. The sisters press the attack wherever their enemy shows weakness, sending frag grenades sailing into gaps in formations and blasting the exposed flanks of artillery with superheated melter beams. And where the foe shows strength, they stand firm, locking ranks against assaults and cutting down onrushing attackers with deliberate and devastating salvos. Yet, it is their seamless pairing of faith with physical prowess that makes them a truly indomitable force. Miraculous bursts of speed are factored into redeployment maneuvers, whilst the spontaneous combustion of nearby foes is relied upon as much as any chain sword or bolt pistol. Assured of the Emperor's providence, the Sisters of the Sacred Rose maintain their ineffable serenity as they slaughter all before them. The order is often accompanied to war by an inordinate number of ecclesiastical followers, Adeptus Ministorum priests and their fanatical conclaves flock to the Sororitas, eager to witness the miracles that will unfold. As such, even small missions are rarely short of soldiers. A core of Sororitas may be supported by many devotees of the Imperial cult, their prayers and cries of penance intermingling with the battle hymn of the Sacred Rose. Canonesses of the Order welcome these faithful auxiliaries and teach the sisters in their charge that the Emperor has the power to act through the least of his servants. Saint Arabella herself was known to gather the unwashed rabble to her banner in times of battle, and it is said that the power of her conviction transformed them into armies of indomitable warriors. The Order's beliefs. More so than any other order, the Sacred Rose avow that they are not only devout servants of the God Emperor, they are the conduits of his divine will. Through them is his glory made manifest in the galaxy, for their words and actions are guided by his infallible wisdom. The Order teaches that victory comes from faith, and faith alone. If a warrior has enough faith, she can command the stars to consume her enemies, and the Emperor will make it so. The sisters act on this belief in every battle, war and crusade they wage, trusting that the triumphal slaughter of their foes has been preordained. Even when one of their number falls, they know that this too is part of the Emperor's plan. A single martyr can spark a fire in 1,000 souls, giving rise to an inferno of faith that can never be extinguished. These beliefs give the Sisters of the Sacred Rose an air of devout serenity that approaches that held by their matriarch, Arabella. She was renowned for her calm nature in the face of horror, and was known among Alicia Dominica's guard as being the most even-tempered. It is widely told that Arabella was instrumental in the negotiations between Dominica and the custodian who led the matriarchs before the Golden Throne. Arabella subsequently earned the honorific of Liberator, for she sought to break the shackles of fear and doubt that bound the faithful, and strove to free humanity from the evils of the faithless. Though a formidable combatant, her true strength sprang from the abundance of miracles that are said to have happened in her presence. There are stories of heretics imploding into lumps of smoldering flesh as her gaze fell upon them, crushed by the weight of their own wickedness, or having their eyes melt from their face as they beheld her glory. The Order's most prominent relic is known as the Light of Saint Agnaitha. Emanating from within an adamantium brazier inscribed with the deeds of the matriarch of the Sacred Rose, Arabella, the Light of Saint Agnaitha is a blinding illumination against the shadows of the Great Rift, laying bare the truth of evil. Those who embody the foulness of the demon are cowed. The touch of its actinic glare, when lifted high with serene grace, causes impure flesh to char and combust in a conflagration of holy fire. and the Order's appearance. The colors of the Sisters of the Sacred Rose's vestments and power armor is white, with contrasting black vestments. The linings of their cloaks are red, as are their weapons. And the Order's badge is a simple white rose. We are beset by many terrible foes in these dark times, but we walk in the light of the Emperor, and we shall not let a single foe stay us from our duty. We are the Sisters of the Great Ecclesiarchy, and we will fight to the bitter end. From Canoness Palmiro. The Order of the Ebon Chalice is one of the major orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas, or the Sisters of Battle. The order was founded in honor of Saint Alicia Dominica herself by the Ecclesiarch Alexis XXII in the 36th millennium, when the Convent Sanctorum was split between the convents on Ophelia 7 and Terra, founding the orders of the Ebon Chalice, the Valorous Heart, the Fiery Heart, and the Argent Shroud. Like all of humanity, the Order of the Ebon Chalice has been faced with untold horrors since the Great Rift opened at the start of the era Indomitus. Alongside their allies of old, the Adeptus Custodes, Space Marines, and Adeptus Mechanicus, the spiritual descendants of Dominica fight to keep the unleashed forces of chaos from overwhelming the Segmentum Solar. The Sisters have eradicated several warbands of Chaos Space Marines, most notably the Blades of the Despoiler, a cornered host of the Black Legion whose path of slaughter was headed directly for Terra. And yet, the Ebon Chalice has also taken heavy losses. Though the Schola Progenium proffers a constant stream of new recruits, only the most promising are accepted into the order, and of those, only a small percentage prove themselves in the grueling initiation rites to become Battle Sisters. This has left the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice straining against the sheer weight of the heretical incursions, but they are far from broken. Each is an expert in the ancient forms of battle established by the Daughters of the Emperor, a warrior who has mastered both their weaponry and their faith. Those who prove themselves worthy enough to rise to the rank of Celestian or Zephyrim are amongst the most skilled veterans in the entire Adepta Sororitas. The most honored of these sisters are even entrusted with a portion of the hallowed truth learned by their matriarch in the Chamber of the Golden Throne. The Order's history. Darkness has descended upon us, but the light of the Emperor still burns bright. We shall not falter in our duty or in our faith, and the enemies of the Ecclesiarchy shall be consumed by our fury. We are the spiritual descendants of Dominica, and we shall fight to the last. From Canoness El Sayan. The Order of the Ebon Chalice is the oldest of the Order's militant, founded at the birth of the Adepta Sororitas by Saint Alicia Dominica herself. The Order was created at the decree of Ecclesiarch Alexis the 22nd, the long-lived successor of the great reformer Sebastian Thor, in the 38th millennium, when the Convent Prioris was split between the convents on Ophelia 7 and Tara into two separate orders militant. Both of these convents are massive fortresses, housing tens of thousands of sisters of many different orders. The Convent Prioris was divided between the Order of the Ebon Chalice, whose founder was Dominica, and the Order of the Argent Shroud, led by Silvana. The Convent Sanctorum was separated into the Order of the Fiery Heart, led by Catherine, and the Order of the Valorous Heart, led by Lucia. Though all these orders of battle sisters could trace their origins back to the original teachings of the Daughters of the Emperor, a small degree of variance in terms of organization and combat doctrine began to manifest as the outlook and persona of the founding matriarchs asserted itself. By the late 36th millennium, the Adepta Sororitas had become synonymous with the power of the ecclesiarchy, implementing its religious dogma and prosecuting its wars across the galaxy. The Order's militants spread, establishing subsidiary convents on key worlds across the Imperium. Dominica, Catherine, Silvana, and Lucia, all of whom had been declared living saints in their own lifetimes, performed legendary acts and led their orders in countless bloody victories. Under the guidance of their matriarch, the Ebon Chalice quickly established itself as the exemplar against which all other orders would be measured. Dominica herself served as the military and spiritual head of the Adepta Sororitas. The Sisters of the Order displayed spiritual and martial discipline that was second to none, with their fortitude in battle matched only by the depth of their faith. In their training and on the field of war, they clung unerringly to the doctrines laid out by the Daughters of the Emperor, with the only adaptations being those that incorporated the use of modern Imperial weaponry and armor. A desire to emulate the perfection of Alicia Dominica burned in the heart of every sister of the Ebon Chalice. Dominica repeatedly showed herself to be the God Emperor's most worthy champion, displaying her strength, constancy, and tactical acumen across myriad war zones. While other orders battled the faithless in the distant reaches of the Imperium, the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice dedicated themselves to safeguarding the sanctity of Tara and the Segmentum Solar. Planet by planet, system by system, the Order expanded their parish, rooting out cults buried deep in the bowels of hive worlds and eradicating mutant conclaves that were infesting barren moons and isolated outposts. Shrine worlds that had long ago fallen to Xenos invasions were besieged by waves of chanting warriors. Wherever the servants of chaos were found, they were met with damning oaths and cleansing flames. As they brought more territories under their care, the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice were able to expose scores of planetary governors and Astra Militarum officers whose practices did not conform to the exact letter of the Imperial Creed. Preachers and confessors were called upon to make examples of the unrighteous, and where such efforts to enforce true faith were met with resistance, the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice marched forth to purge the impure. No sinner was safe under the exacting gaze of Dominica's order. After several centuries of faithful service to the Emperor and her order, Alicia Dominica was martyred, falling in combat during the scouring of Fried Wide's world. Not since the passing of Sebastian Thor himself had the bell tower of the ecclesiastical palace tolled so dolefully. Her martyrdom left a gaping void in the organization of the Adepta Sororitas, for none amongst the ranks considered themselves worthy to follow in her hallowed footsteps. Eventually, Sister Palmiro, a Dialogus of the Order of the Holy Word, was chosen by her peers as the most suitable to take over from the fallen matriarch and become abbess of the Adepta Sororitas. She accepted, but not before solemnly expressing that she could never hope to equal her predecessors' faith, vision, or fortitude. It was this humility that made her the obvious choice, for to serve the Sororitas, the Ecclesiarchy, and the Emperor in Dominica's stead was regarded not as a mark of honor, but as the undertaking of a grave and thankless responsibility. Here are some of their most notable campaigns. The Fall of Bellatis 4, from 143 to 151 M41. Faced with the planetary death at the hands of Abaddon the Despoiler Planet Killer warship, the Imperium is forced to abandon the world of Bellatis 4. Even as key units and assets are withdrawn, cultists hiding amongst the population rise up against the servants of the Emperor, sparking a widespread and desperate struggle for liberation. The Battle Sisters of the Order of the Ebon Chalice comport themselves with skill, courage, and honor, successfully evacuating numerous key ecclesiarchy officials and recovering several irreplaceable relics before departing upon the last transport to leave Bellatis 4. The Magdalene Prime Civil War. In the same time frame of 143 to 151 M41. When the followers of the cult of Balthalamus plunge Magdalene Prime into anarchy and bloodshed, the Battle Sisters of the Order of the Ebon Chalice bear the brunt of the fighting. The Order's preceptory reclusium is repeatedly targeted by the maddened hordes, but holds out against seemingly impossible odds until relief eventually arrives. By the time a relief force consisting of Space Marines of the Fire Angels, Sons of the Kraken, and Red Seraph's chapters arrives, the Battle Sisters have begun a determined counterattack. Victory is ultimately won. The Blood Tide Martyrs in 876 M41. Chaos comes to the Basilica of Saint Marielle on the world of Van Horn in the shape of the bloodthirster known as the Lord of the Blood Tide. The first to oppose the demons' ravening legions are the Battle Sisters of the Order of the Ebon Chalice. But soon after battle is joined, all contact is lost with the Adepta Sororitas. The demons are eventually vanquished with the arrival of the Fourth Brotherhood of the Grey Knights. Upon the Space Marines' victory, contact with the Imperium is re-established, and it is discovered that every Battle Sister on the planet has been killed. The slain are officially elevated into the ranks of honored martyrs in the eyes of the Adepta Sororitas. The Battle of the Penitent in 938 M41. The Ebon Chalice and the Valorous Heart suffered great losses against war boss Black Axe's orc hordes. They were eventually pushed back to the walls of the Cathedral of Saint Dufour. The attackers were held back only due to the determination and sacrifice of hundreds of Sisters Repentia. They bought enough time for the Battle Sisters to open the vast cathedral gates, and the greenskins were slaughtered shortly after by 24 penitent engines. The Promethean War in 980 M41. The Ebon Chalice reinforced the Space Marines of the Salamanders chapter who were engaged in a brutal urban war against the dread Chaos Space Marines of the Black Legion on the world of Helatine in 980 M41. The enemy was put to the torch as dozens of emulators and Land Raider Redeemers burned a path through that world's war-torn cities. Despite the strength of their forces, the advance was halted when Lord Gralastix, the demon prince leading the forces of Chaos, unleashed a legion of possessed Chaos Space Marines. As the frenzied Chaos Horde ripped through the ranks of the Imperial forces, the Battle Sisters and Space Marines fought back to back, their bolters and flamers blazing away as every warrior endeavored to sell their life dearly in the Emperor's cause. However, the Allied forces were saved when Saint Celestine appeared, falling upon the Chaos forces like an avenging angel. The living saint carved a path through the horde towards Lord Gralastix, before plunging her blade through his black heart. With his death, the forces of Chaos on the world were destroyed, but of Celestine there was no sign, for she vanished as mysteriously as she had appeared. Keepers of the Faith in M41. Dialogi of the Order of the Lexicon are called to the refinery world of Van Gogh's Folly to study a cache of ancient texts discovered deep within the planet's crust. While the sisters engage in their research, the Van Goghian Promethean barons begin speculating that the texts may constitute an account of the Emperor written during the Great Crusade. After more than a solar decade, the Dialogi report their findings to the Ecclesiarchy. Shortly after, a preceptory of the Ebon Chalice appears at Van Gogh's Folly and destroys all 4 of the planet's spaceports. Through orbital macro Lord Haler's Canoness Intolerance speaks a prayer of passing for the Promethean barons and their serfs. She then enacts Exterminatus by releasing auto-combustion pathogens into the atmosphere. The 13th Black Crusade in 999 M41. The Ebon Chalice contributed 4 preceptories to the defense of the Imperium from Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade. The Indomitus Crusade in M42. Robert Guillemot, the newly instated Lord Commander of the Imperium, launches the Indomitus Crusade to save humanity from total annihilation. Through this grand campaign, he is able to reinforce the embattled Adeptus Astartes chapters, bolstering them with Primaris Space Marines. The Order of the Ebon Chalice is instrumental in the Crusade's opening maneuvers, fighting alongside Guillemot's forces to save the most strategically vital planets in the Segmentum Solar. other orders lend their might on many of the Crusades' multiple war fronts. The Road of Martyrs in M42. The Road of Martyrs was an early battle of the Indomitus Crusade. The campaign was launched by the Crusades' fleet Tertius, which was spearheaded by Sisters of Battle forces from the Ebon Chalice and our Martyred Lady towards the Eye of Terror in the Segmentum Obscurus. Their dangerous assignment was to roll back chaos advances in the region that became known as the Road of Martyrs. And the War of Beasts, from 1 M42 to 25 M42. The Ebon Chalice took part in the defense of the hive world of Vigilus in the Imperium Nihilus to protect that strategic planet at one end of the Nahmund Gauntlet from assaults by Xenos and Chaos forces. Vigilus must be defended if the Imperium is to maintain the only known clear passage through the Great Rift from the Imperium Sanctus. The Relics of the Order. The Enunciation of the Creed. The traditionalists of the Order of the Ebon Chalice eagerly grasp any opportunity to apply the undeniable letter of the Imperial Creed upon the craven heretic who shirks his sentence, or the witch hiding behind her puppets. This sacred condemner bolter-gun announces their deviancy in unavoidable utterances of destructive justice. The Blade of Admonition. This blessed power sword is the very blade carried into battle by Alicia Dominica, the founding saint of the Adepta Sororitas, and was famously used to cut the head from the traitor Gorge Vanda and bring an end to the reign of blood. Saint Dominica wielded this blade in the decades following the reformation of the ecclesiarchy, and 1,000 more false prophets and heretics were slain upon its razor edge before Alicia's eventual martyrdom. And the Grail of Ages. During the Order's early wars of faith, Alicia carried the Grail of Ages with her to war. This goblet of black stone was created to be the embodiment of the matriarch's spiritual communion with the Emperor. Little is known about the Grail and the power it held. Few accounts exist of this relic's holy energy being unleashed on the battlefield, and the details they provide range between the miraculous and the heretical. Old ecclesiastical scribes wrote that when Dominica poured out the vessel's contents, the God Emperor's voice boomed, and with a single word shattered whole armies. Well-guarded records of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica show instances in which every psyker on a planet spontaneously burst into flames when the matriarch of the Ebon Chalice carried the Grail into battle. It is believed that there are tales of the Grail of Ages within the eldritch tomes of the Black Library, and possibly even in the writhing pages of the Book of Magnus. As for the Sisters of the Ebon Chalice, they do not speak of its powers, but have always professed that the relic symbolizes their sacred duty and eternal burden, that they are the bearers of the secrets learned by Dominica before the Golden Throne, and are the vessels of the God Emperor's holy truth. This goes some way to explaining why the Order has ever sought to destroy any texts concerning the Grail, have immolated their scribes as heretics. And the Order's appearance. The vestments of the Ebon Chalice are based on the original garments worn by the Daughters of the Emperor and their combat doctrines, based on equal parts religious devotion and military training, have remained largely unchanged for 4,000 standard years. The Battle Sisters of this order wear black power armor covered by white vestments. The vestments have red piping and are also lined in red. The weapons of the Ebon Chalice are also often painted a deep red. The symbol of Dominica's order is the skull-filled and flaming Ebon Chalice, a representation of the terrible knowledge imparted to her when she was brought before the Golden Throne. Few are aware of the significance of this symbol in Sororitas art. Heretics crave the cleansing fire of absolution. They need not fear, for we shall deliver. From Axiom First, attributed to Canoness Halifax. The Order of the Argent Shroud is one of the major orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas, or the Sisters of Battle, founded in honor of Saint Silvana by the Ecclesiarch Alexis the 22nd in the 36th millennium. It was at that time that the convent sanctorum was split between the convents in Ophelia 7 and Terra, founding the orders militant of the Ebon Chalice, Valorous Heart, Fiery Heart, and the Argent Shroud. The majority of the Argent Shroud sanctuaries lie in the region of space that abuts the jagged mass of warp storms known as the Great Rift. During the Noctis Aeterna, when chaos energies were blasted across the galaxy and the light of the Holy Astronomicon was temporarily extinguished, many of these sanctuary worlds were thought lost. Screaming maelstroms enveloped entire sub-parishes, while countless other worlds under the Order's watch were bathed in the warping glow of the Cicatrix Maledictum. As galactic maps were compiled and the true scale of the horror became apparent, it was estimated that as many as 80% of the Argent Shroud sisters might have been swallowed by the yawning maw. But in the harrowing years of the Era Indomitus since, the Order has continued to fight against the marauding forces of chaos without showing any signs of diminishment. The Sororitas appear without warning in raging war zones along the breadth of the Great Rift, striking with crippling speed at their unprepared enemies. Multiple preceptories that were thought lost have since been seen in battle, and though they say nothing of the fates of their sanctuary worlds, they fight with unmatched hatred against the servants of the Dark Gods. The Order's history. Like the other founding saints of the Sororitas, Silvana was one of 5 sisters and a member of Alicia Dominica's bodyguard when she was taken before the Golden Throne. She is noted for the many selfless acts of self-sacrifice she performed throughout her life, and sisters who have survived a battle despite terrible odds often invoke her name in thanks for deliverance from the forces of evil. She was one of the first sisters to lead imperial crusades in the name of the Emperor of Mankind. Her service as head of the Order was brief. Shortly after Alicia Dominica had founded the Order of the Ebon Chalice, the remaining sisters of the Convent Prioris were placed under Sylvana's command, but she was struck down before launching a single war of faith. In the late 36th millennium, she is said to have died after being poisoned by a death cult assassin, and the Journal of Ecclesiarch Alexis XXII states that her body mysteriously vanished after having laid in state for a solar week within the inner sanctum of the Convent Prioris. Some suggest the murderer was an agent still loyal to Gauge Van Dyer's vision of the ecclesiarchy, whereas others proposed that the forces of the heretical Alpha Legion played a hand in the fell deed. A silvery image of her bones was left imprinted on her death shroud, which is revered as one of the Sisterhood's most holy relics, and that gives the Order its title. The image most often associated with Saint Sylvana is that death shroud, imprinted with the ghostly image of her skeleton. She was declared an imperial saint by the unanimous vote of the Holy Synod of the Ecclesiarchy. Sylvana was renowned for her altruistic spirit and her stoic faith. She seldom spoke, believing that deeds on the battlefield spoke more of a warrior's devotion than any words. The Sisters of the Argent Shroud likewise rarely speak, and they are famed for their selfless acts of heroism. As such, the Order fields a high number of Celestian and Seraphim squads, their faith a shield as strong as their silver armor, and their righteousness a weapon as potent as bolter fire. And now, onto their most notable campaigns. The Gaia Crusade in M36. The Gaia Crusade was the first campaign ever undertaken by the Order of the Argent Shroud. It is said that an Argent Shroud commandery fought a raging war across the magma flats of Devost Prime that lasted a whole Terran year, emerging with only a handful of losses and the skulls of 3 Iron Warriors Warpsmiths. The Chirag Persecution in M41. Under Canoness Preceptor Crisima, the Order of the Argent Shroud enforced the pogroms of the notorious confessor Petasus against the mutants of Chirag, cleansing the streets with their holy flamers of the foul taint of genetic deviancy. The Exorcism of the Infected in M41. As the Death Guard's 3rd Plague Company advances along the fringe of the Great Rift, whole systems in their wake are consumed by the disease known as the Gloaming Bloat. The infection begins to spread through the Yunthilmar system, transforming the inhabitants of all 26 planets into swollen poxwalkers. The system's few survivors congregate on the moon of Yunthilmar 15. Their prayers for salvation appear to be answered when a preceptory of Sisters of the Argent Shroud arrive unannounced from the warp. The survivors' hopes turn sour when they see that there are fewer than 1,000 of them, and they are facing down whole worlds filled with Nurgle-tainted shamblers. But the Sororitas pay no heed to the cries of despair. Instead, they set about excavating a long-abandoned temple buried beneath the ice at the moon's southern pole. After digging the temple's antenna-like spire from the frost, the sisters enter the inner sanctum to engage in silent prayer. After 3 days, a pulse of silver light bursts from the antenna, illuminating each of the planets in the Yanthilmar system one by one. Without word, they depart the moon, traveling to each of the system's worlds in turn. When the survivors left on the moon eventually follow them, they find only devastation. Each planet, once teeming with poxwalkers, was now littered with mangled corpses that bore no evidence of Nurgle's foul degradations. The Third War for Armageddon in 998 M41. When the largest Orc Warg ever raised, led by the warlord Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka, assaulted the Armageddon sector and began the Third War for Armageddon, the Order of the Argent Shroud responded in kind. They sent 7 whole companies of battle sisters to assist the beleaguered sector. 4 companies were deployed to the fire wastes, whilst the remaining 3 spread throughout almost every war zone on Armageddon. In one notable incident during the brutal campaign, the Order found themselves fighting alongside Armageddon Militia and the notorious Flesh Terror's Space Marine chapter. Chapter Master Gabriel Seth denied Canoness Carmina any tactical counsel whatsoever. After nearly a century in leading her sisters to war, occasionally alongside Marine chapters, this treatment came as no surprise. But the Order's main grievance was with the way the notorious chapter conducted themselves during the ensuing battle. The Battle Sisters struck Warlord Raklam's army as it changed positions from shelling the mining outpost of Gaius Point to occupying the settlement. Battered by 3 days' bombardment, the population of Gaius Point had dug underground and, under the careful ministrations of the Order's Sisters Superior, were determined to form an ad hoc militia to defend their homes. The Flesh Terrors launched their attack on the Orc column when it was approximately 1 Imperial mile from Gaius Point, and, hitting the Orcs in the rear and flanks, they drove the disorganized enemy into the Battle Sisters' waiting guns. Caught between Sister and Marine, many Orcs were slaughtered, with the survivors mounting their vehicles to escape with all haste. The sisters first noticed something was very wrong when 3 mobs of Orcs, deserted by their cowardly leaders, formed up and assaulted their front line, choosing to engage the Gaius Point militia rather than the sisters' deadly accurate bolt guns. The Flesh Terrors, apparently driven mad by some kind of battle frenzy, crashed into the Orcs' rear ranks just as the first Orcs reached the militia. The Flesh Terrors fell upon them in an orgy of bloodletting. Many Marines removed their helmets and, eschewing the use of pistols and other ranged weapons, set about the Orcs with chained swords and knife and tooth. Canoness Carmina witnessed in mute horror Marines ripping out the throats of Orcs with their bared teeth. The raw fury and love of carnage she saw in their faces as they literally tore the enemy apart made her shudder in fear. The orcs were annihilated within seconds of the Marines' attack, but the small number of the enemy were simply not enough for the flesh terrors, who by now seemed to have been driven into a fever pitch of absolute bloodlust. With no more orcs for them to butcher, they scrambled over the barricades on the perimeter of Gaius Point and smashed into the thin line of militia. Properly driven into a true battle frenzy now, the flesh terrors performed acts of the most debauched nature in the name of violence. Men, women, and youths all fell beneath their blades. The old, the infirm, none were spared the flesh terrors' crazed attack. One of the Order's sister superiors later reported that she had personally witnessed cannibalistic acts committed by the frenzied Marines. The Canoness did not personally witness this, but she believed the Sister Superior's report nonetheless. She ordered a hasty withdrawal of her sisters from the Marines with all haste before they reached their positions. The Canoness later reported the incident to the Inquisition. Her report stated that the flesh terrors were unstable beyond redemption, and that they were not fit for duty anywhere within their mighty Imperium. She firmly believed that it was evident that the flesh terrors had evolved far beyond any point reached by a loyalist chapter and requested their immediate destruction. In a separate incident, the sisters garrisoning the fortified basilica of the Temple of the Emperor Ascendant, located within Hive Hell's Reach, was overrun and destroyed. Many of the sacred relics of the world's first colonists were lost. Then Reclusia Grimaldus of the Black Templars, one of only a handful of survivors, managed to save some of these precious relics. The Order Combat Doctrine. Without fear or doubt, the Sisters of the Argent Shroud throw themselves into the deadliest conflicts, marching boldly against overwhelming enemy numbers and into hellish battlefield conditions. They avoid formulating grand stratagems and rarely communicate intended tactics to their allies, to the ire of many Imperial generals. Simply put, the Order places its trust in the divine guidance of the Emperor more than in the carefully orchestrated plans of his fallible servants. The results achieved by them soon put paid to any misgivings. Spearheads of silver-clad warriors race towards teeming Xenos throngs, and invasion cathedrals hurtle onto worlds writhing with chaos energy. With swift surges, the Sororitas smash through the defensive formations of far larger armies, destroying monstrous artillery batteries stationed behind the front lines, and permanently silencing the demagoguery of heretical enemy commanders. Lightning-fast assaults are followed by rapid withdrawals, and as the foe reels in confusion, the Sisters of the Argent Shroud reform and strike again. By committing themselves so boldly to these offenses, the warriors of the Argent Shroud often leave themselves cut off from support, surrounded and outgunned. But it is in such dire circumstances that their faith shines brightest. the sisters cry out to Saint Sylvana for protection, knowing that their fallen saint watches over them in battle. Incoming salvos ricochet off their gleaming armor. Brutal enemy blades fail to find their mark, and blasts of malefic energy veer miraculously off course. Filled with divine conviction, the Sororitas fight on against impossible odds, standing strong amidst the carnage as they drop their foes one by one. Those sisters who fall often save their entire squad from annihilation with their dying action, throwing themselves into the line of fire just as their matriarch would have done. There are countless legends in which the Sisters of the Argent Shroud emerge from battles that Imperial logisticians had calculated to be unsurvivable. The most famous of these was the opening assault of the Gaia Crusade, in which the Order was first deployed to war. It is said that a commandery fought a raging war across the magma flats of Devost Prime that lasted a whole Terran year, emerging with only a handful of losses and the skulls of 3 Iron Warriors warpsmiths. Due to their propensity for hit-and-run assaults, the Sisters of the Argent Shroud have some of the deadliest and most experienced shock troops of all the Adepta Sororitas. Many of the Order's commanderies boast large contingents of Dominion squads, who are deployed en masse to break through the defensive lines of unsuspecting enemies, or are sent in small numbers to infiltrate fortresses, macro bunkers, and command centers in hostile territories. These dominions are also leaders in many of the Order's rites of worship, their prayers on the battlefield often being the first intoned before being echoed by the other sisters. The Order's beliefs. The Order of the Argent Shroud teaches that deeds have more power than words when it comes to purifying the spirit and purging the taint of corruption from the Imperium. This belief is derived from the example of Sylvana, whose acts of bravery and faithfulness were well recorded during the Age of Apostasy, and yet not a single word spoken by her is recorded in any surviving transcription from the time. Her sisters emulate this by speaking very little, and by entering long periods of complete silence whenever they engage in training. This limitation of speech does not preclude them from prayer or worship, and like the members of other orders, they still chant hymns of wrathful purgation as they march into battle. But the Sisters of the Argent Shroud believe that it is more righteous to provide their service to the God Emperor than it is to ask for his holy favor. A peculiarity amongst the Order of the Argent Shroud lies with how they treat their dead, where the members of other orders cry out when a comrade is slain, reciting prayers to guide the fallen soul to the Emperor and oaths of holy vengeance against the enemy. The Sisters of the Argent Shroud say not a word. Amongst their ranks, death is met with silence. Certain ecclesiastical scholars attribute this to a belief within the order that martyrdom is a luxury, a reprieve from sacred duty that should only come when there are no more enemies left to slay. Yet, the dead Sororitas are still handled with great care and solemnity after the fighting has finished. The martyrs are removed from the battlefield in somber processions, their wounds cleaned and dressed, their armor repaired and polished, and they are laid to rest for 7 solar days in the sanctuary in which they served. After that, the bodies are removed, though what becomes of them after this point is not known by anyone outside the Order. The relic of the Argent Shroud, the Simulacrum. The Simulacrum is cut from the same cloth as that which was laid over the body of Saint Sylvana, the matriarch of the Order. It is carried by the sisters designated as the Spirit of Sylvana when the 6 chosen members of the Order's Pronatus escort Saint Catherine's remains to battle. As the chosen sister reads aloud the many deeds of Sylvana, an image of the saint appears in the shroud, revealing its miraculous nature for all to see. And the Order's appearance. As the name of the Order suggests, these Sisters of Battle wear silver power armor coupled with white cloaks that have red linings. Weapons that they bear are also red, and its iconography is that of an ebon skull with an iron halo.